Emergency at school, ice-cold Dr. S. shocking response to little girl S. crisis panic ensues. The school bell rang, but it wasn't a simple ring like any other day. This time, it echoed with a sense of urgency that made hearts race and jaws drop. Oh, there was a scene unfolding that would haunt the playground sky for years to come. A little girl, not more than 7 years old, crumpled to the ground in an instant, clutching her chest. Her eyes widened in terror, a sight so stark and fear-fueled, it sent the entire school into a spiral of chaos. Teachers screamed for help, their panic slicing through the air like a knife. Children stumbled over each other, desperate to see what was happening. But the most frightening element? The strange, stoic figure of Dr. Wills, the school's hired physician, standing eerily calm amidst all the madness. His icy demeanor was unnerving, as if he was a phantasm from another time. Instead of rushing to the girl's aid, he merely observed with an unsettling gaze. It felt like something sinister was brewing beneath his practiced, emotionless facade. The school nurse, frantic and breathing heavily, darted towards the girl while shouting orders to others. "Call 911. But all eyes were glued on Dr. Wills. Why wasn't he moving? Why wasn't he helping? It was as if the very essence of empathy had been drained from him, replaced with an eerie indifference that sent shivers down spines. Murmurs swelled among the onlookers, voices mixing into a terrified buzz. What's wrong with him? Why isn't he doing anything? The questions flitted through the air like angry bees. Parents outside the building began to gather, their faces pale with dread. They could sense something was very, very wrong. Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. All at once, the air shifted, heavy with tension. The little girl had become so still, so silent, that it sent a fresh wave of horror rushing through the crowd. Was she even breathing? Dr. Wills finally moved, but it was too late for comforting gestures. He approached with a deliberate slowness that left everyone whispering dark tales. Just what was going through his mind? What would unfold next? The answer seemed poised on the edge of a knife, a secret waiting to spill into chaos. What drove this man? A savior or something far more sinister? As the sirens wailed in the distance, a question loomed over the crowd like a storm cloud. Would they find out before it was too late? Tension crackled in the air as Dr. Wills finally stepped forward. His face remained blank, as if he were an actor in a performance where he had forgotten his lines. The girl lay there, her small frame motionless on the ground, and the dread in the crowd thickened like fog. "Someone get her parents!" shouted a panicked teacher. The urgency cracked through the facade of disbelief. Dr. Wills knelt beside the girl, every eye locked onto him. He gently placed 2 fingers on her wrist. The crowd held their breaths. Would he feel a pulse? Would he lift the girl into his arms and carry her to safety? But instead, his head tilted just slightly, as if he were lost in thought rather than in action. "Sick, very sick," he finally murmured, his voice devoid of warmth. Those words gnawed at the very core of the parents gathered just outside the school gate. They were drawn with a magnetic force to the scene, pushing through the throngs of teachers and aides who tried to maintain order. "Is she going to be okay?" A mother's voice trembled as she stepped closer, desperation cutting through her fear. Dr. Wills looked up, his icy blue eyes piercing. "Call the paramedics. This is beyond what I can handle." There it was, the clarity that bubbled up amidst the chaos. Yet, his lack of urgency stirred discomfort. What did he mean, beyond what he could handle? The other adults exchanged glances, uncertainty swirling among them like an impending storm. The shrill sound of sirens sliced through the mournful silence, growing closer. The crowd breathed a collective sigh, half hopeful, half fearful. But then, in a moment that felt surreal, Dr. Wills turned his gaze toward the nearest teacher. "You need to clear this area," he said calmly, as if discussing the weather on a Tuesday. "We don't want others getting involved." Why did he want to maintain that distance? Why was he eager to isolate the situation, when more helping hands would surely be better? "Have you no heart?" someone yelled from the back of the crowd. Those words hung in the air, electric with a charged tension. It felt like some unnameable force snapped, and the crowd erupted with cries of outrage. "Get away from her!" Another voice broke through, filled with raw anger. Several parents surged forward, fueled by fury and panic. They demanded intervention while the police, sirens blaring, approached the school's entrance. Dr. Wills remained unfazed, unmoved. Was he a villain in a movie, betraying the trust of the very children he was meant to protect? The scene turned chaotic. The police officers burst into action, huddling close to the girl, while Dr. Wills stood back, his face as pale as the ghost stories told during sleepovers. "Get a medic on site." An officer barked, but Dr. Wills had already stepped away from the shadows. The realization barely landed, a drip of sweat slid down his temple, betraying his otherwise composed demeanor. As the paramedics rushed to the fallen girl, the crowd fell silent, an eerie calm enveloping them. And then a whispered name floated through the air, breaking the stillness like glass shattering. Emma. Who was Emma? More importantly, what did it mean for the little girl lying unconscious on the ground? Just as the mystery deepened, the first medic shook her head in disbelief at the state of the child. "Wait, it's not what it looks like." And with that chilling statement, darkness loomed even larger. Would the truth emerge from the shadows, or would they all be trapped in this nightmare? What had Dr. Wills really seen? The air was thick with uncertainty, an almost tangible dread that wrapped around the crowd like a winter coat, too tight yet inescapable. As the paramedics circled the girl, their urgent movements punctuated by the harsh beeping of equipment, a father forced his way to the front. His face was a mask of terror, fury and fear twisted together. "What do you mean, it's not what it looks like?" he shouted, his voice raw, almost breaking. The medic looked up, her expression a mixture of confusion and sorrow. "She's not just unconscious. She's showing signs of anaphylaxis." Gasps echoed through the crowd, a chilling reminder of vulnerability wrapped in innocence. The air felt electric as the realization sparked. Parents instinctively flocked to their own children, eyes darting nervously. Could it happen to them? To anyone? Dr. Wills stepped back, his eyes widening as if a shadow had crossed his heart. Something was brewing beneath his calm exterior. Now, glancing at the girl, then the parents, his earlier detachment was morphing into something more sinister. Was it guilt? Or fear? Anaphylaxis? That word hung like a lead weight, pulling everyone further into despair. It felt like a betrayal, a shared breath of horror that united the worried parents. How could this happen in a place meant to feel safe? "Does she have a history of allergies?" one officer asked, his tone urgent. Blood rushed in the medic's ears. She was focused on her task, but the tension was thick around her. She turned back to the girl, shaking her head slightly. "We don't know, we need to stabilize her first." He's saying to clear the area. Another voice shouted again, panic creeping in like an unwelcome visitor, refusing to leave. It was another parent, one who had forced his way to the front, heart racing. "What do you mean, clear the area?" someone yelled back, eyes blazing. "She's a child, for heaven's sake." Dr. Wills's lips pressed into a thin line as questions swirled in the crowd. The public outcry had swelled. Some were shouting for answers while others demanded action. Each sound was like a drop of water falling into an abyss, echoing uncertainty. A distant siren, that once filled them with hope, now felt like an ominous omen. Could the ambulance arrive in time? Were there injections or interventions that could pull them from this darkness? Then, the medic's voice cut through the noise. "I need you all to step back," she commanded firmly, pushing the parents gently aside as she engaged in the delicate process of stabilizing the child. Every second felt stretched, the tension inflating until they could hardly breathe. Dr. Wills finally turned his back on the scene, his fists clenching at his sides. Why had he stepped down? What did he truly know? The crowd's roiling anger and fear finally sought a scapegoat. They turned their ire toward him, the man who had been so aloof, so disconnected. "Are you just going to stand there?" a woman yelled, tears streaming down her face. "You're a doctor. Help her." For a moment, his icy demeanor cracked, and the flickering light of panic danced in his eyes. A secret trembled on the edge of his tongue, a truth that could change everything. But would he share it? "Everyone calm down. Please," he stammered, but the crowd was already spiraling. Voices rose, anger burning anew. And then the name again, Emma, cut through the chaos once more, leaving a trail of confusion. Who was this girl? Why had she tumbled so deep into madness? The medic's face was grim as she fought to save her. The parents held each other tightly, a united front in the face of terror. "We need answers. Now." Someone shouted, but would they get them before it was too late? As the uncertainty deepened and darkness surged, questions gnawed at their edges, waiting to crack open a chilling reality. What would come next? What truth would Dr. Wills finally reveal? Dr. Wills felt the weight of the world pressing down on him. The voices around him melded into a frantic buzz, each one echoing his own mix of fear and dread. He could almost hear the clock ticking, each second slipping away like sand in an hourglass. He turned back just in time to see the medic's hands shaking as she prepared to administer an emergency injection. The child's lips were turning blue, her small body limp and fragile. Every gasp from the crowd felt like a stab to his chest. "Is there anyone in the crowd who knows her?" The medic shouted, her voice rising above the din. "We need information now." Parents exchanged frantic glances, desperation swirling among them like a storm. "Emma!" a mother cried out, pushing forward. "This is Emma, my daughter. She's allergic to peanuts." The words hung heavy in the air, a punch to the gut for everyone present. A stunned silence filled the space, the medic's face hardened with newfound urgency. "Someone get me an EpiPen. Do you have one?" The officer pressed, eyes wide. I didn't think," the mother stammered, hands trembling. "Focus!" shouted the medic. "We can't waste time." Dr. Wills felt a shiver crawl up his spine. Peanut allergies were lethal. Finding the right antidote needed to happen in seconds, not minutes. But was there something deeper at play here? Had he seen signs before? He stepped forward, but a wave of emotion crashed over him. "Emma needs her family. Someone!" he yelled. "Get her parents." Before anyone could move, the unmistakable wail of sirens sliced through the air, more reverberations of hope than a harbinger of doom. Yet the arrival didn't quell the crowd's anxiety, it only heightened it. A pair of paramedics rushed past, black uniforms stark against the chaos. Their calm efficiency clashed with the unruly fear of the onlookers. "Stand clear!" one shouted as they maneuvered their gurney. The crowd thinned reluctantly, torn between instinctive concern and the medic's order. Parents held their children tightly, keeping close like shields against the uncertainty. When the medics reached Emma, the other paramedics pulled out what was needed. As they set to work, the medic anxiously assessed the situation, her brow furrowing as she glanced at Dr. Wills. "We need that epinephrine. If she has a peanut allergy, I'll go." He snapped, heart racing, and before he knew it, he was pushing through the crowd, their fearful faces blurring into one chaotic mass. The nearer he got to the entrance, the more questions looped through his mind. Why hadn't he acted earlier? What haunted him? With each step, he wrestled with the shadows of his past, memories crowding him, lives once saved but also lost under his watch, choices made in silence that now screamed for acknowledgement. Finally reaching the school's office, he gasped for breath and slammed the door open. "Where is it?" he demanded of the startled staff. "Where's the EpiPen?" Hands shaking, a secretary pointed to a drawer. "In there. Please hurry." Fingers fumbling, he worked against time. The slightest hesitation was a luxury he couldn't afford. Outside, the distant echoes of chaos pierced through the paper-thin walls of the office. Time felt unyielding. He gripped the EpiPen tight and rushed back, heart hammering against his ribs, but as he burst back into the scene, what he saw struck him dumb. It wasn't just fear brewing there, but something far darker, something that brought a chill deeper than the cold winter air outside. Dr. Wills froze, the air heavy with unspoken truths. What had he walked into? In that moment, the wheels of fate were set irrevocably in motion, but what had he been too afraid to confront? The crowd erupted again, voices trembling with uncertainty. Would Emma survive? Would he finally reveal the truth, and what if that truth was even darker than anyone could have imagined? Dr. Wills registered the frantic exchange, but his awareness snapped into focus on the girl in distress. The medic's desperate clicks of the medical instruments seemed to amplify the tension, and every breath felt like a battle against an unrelenting tide. "Get out of the way!" a voice barked, and Dr. Wills instinctively stepped back, holding the EpiPen like a torch amidst the storm. But rather than shifting his weight between flight and fight, he felt anchored, as if invisible chains bound him to the brutal reality: a child was on the brink of losing her life. "What's wrong?" he muttered under his breath, the question not directed at anyone but a desperate plea to the universe. He felt a pull, as if something hidden had been tugging at his sleeve, something he had buried. Perhaps it was guilt, or perhaps it was a forgotten promise to himself that he'd save every soul he could. "Doc! Come on, we need you." A medic hit the ground running nearby, his urgency igniting Dr. Wills like a fuse. "Right." He surged forward, adrenaline coursing through his veins. The images of past failures flooded back, but he pushed them aside, focusing on Emma, the small girl whose life hung by a thread. He needed to act. With shaky hands, he held out the EpiPen toward the medic. "Here. I've got it." The medic's eyes bounced between the EpiPen and the frail child's lips, now almost devoid of color. "We can't, she needs it in her system. We'll be too late." Dr. Wills gritted his teeth. "No. I'll do it." He stepped forward, heart hammering in his ears. "Stop." The medic's voice rang with authority. "You can't, it's too risky." Without but time wasn't on their side. With trembling intensity, Dr. Wills pressed through, a battle between rationality and instinct waging inside him. Every moment seemed to stretch and twist, and in an exhilarating yet terrifying flash, he plunged the EpiPen into Emma's thigh. A collective gasp rose from the crowd as silence slammed down around them, each person holding their breath as if it might control time itself. Dr. Wills felt the weight of their stares, anxious expectation mingling with rising dread. He could feel sweat pooling at his back, his focus narrowing onto Emma's slight form. For a second, nothing happened. The world moved in slow motion, the rhythm of chaos slicing through the still air. Then, slowly, the shadows receded. The medic's breathing shifted, an unmistakable flicker of hope igniting her eyes as color began to return to Emma's cheeks, but then came the scream. A woman, off to the side, hands clasped over her mouth as if trying to swallow her anguish. "That's not just allergies. Something's not right." Her words splintered the air, severing the fragile thread of relief that had just begun to weave itself over the crowd. Dr. Wills turned to her, confusion etching itself across his face. "What do you mean?" he demanded, his voice hoarse, panic clenching his throat. "Emma, they all said she was allergic to nuts not too long ago. Just last week, I overheard." The woman hesitated, her face paling, yet there was a flicker of accusation in her eyes. "They said she had something much worse." Dr. Wills felt as if the ground had collapsed beneath him. "What are you talking about?" The medic continued working, yet the unease darkened the air around them. Dr. Wills glanced back at the girl. Breath in, breath out. But were they truly out of the woods? Dread tightened his chest as pieces of a much bigger puzzle began snapping together in his mind. Had he stepped from the frying pan into the fire? Was Emma's crisis not merely an allergy but a symptom of something far more sinister? As uncertainty loomed and chaos rippled through the crowd, the air thickened with unaddressed fears. The medic shouted orders, her voice rising above the waves of confusion, but Dr. Wills felt paralyzed by the looming possibility: what was really happening here? He was about to ask for more details when a child's terrified shout cut through the tension, "Look!" And every head turned at once, eyes wide as disbelief cascaded down like a dark curtain. What else had surfaced? Beneath the surface? Dr. Wills felt the rush of air leave his lungs as the terrified child's shout echoed in his ears. The crowd shifted like a tidal wave, all eyes drawn away from Emma and toward the playground where a shadow loomed large against the fading sunlight. What is it? Dr. Wills managed to rasp, urgency clawing at his throat. A little boy stood frozen, one hand pointing toward the tree line that bordered the schoolyard. His face was ghostly white, eyes wide and unblinking, as if he'd witnessed something unspeakable. Dr. Wills turned his head, following the child's gaze. In the clearing by the old oak tree, something flickered, a dark shape darting between the branches like a phantom slipping through the veil of twilight. Gasps rippled through the crowd, a wave of fear washing over the parents and teachers, their faces turning to masks of dread. What in the world? The medic beside him mumbled, her attention shifting, pulse quickening. For an agonizing heartbeat, it felt as if time folded in on itself. All conversation stilled, and the buzz of uncertainty gave way to a chilling silence. Dr. Wills took a small step forward, his heart pounding like a drum in his chest. Instinct called, urging him to investigate, but he hesitated, the image of Emma still lying pale, gasping for breath, haunting him. "Hey! Someone call the police!" A man shouted from the periphery, tension thrumming in the air. Fear gripped the crowd tighter, parents pulling their children close. The noise of whispering escalated, terrified murmurs of "What is that? And do you see it?" took shape against the chilling backdrop of the playground. Dr. Wills forced his focus back to the medic, who was still trying to coax Emma back to consciousness. "Is she stable?" he asked urgently, even as he felt a fresh trickle of anxiety unfurl in his gut. "I'm giving her everything I can," she replied tersely, not looking up. "But I need more time. I can't let her down," he thought, wrestling with the weight of responsibility crashing down. His gut twisted, torn between ensuring Emma's recovery and confronting whatever darkness was creeping just out of view. That's not all. The same woman from earlier stepped closer, her disbelief morphing into conviction. "You have to believe me. The talk about Emma, they said something was brewing up since that day. She wasn't just allergic, the doctors." Her voice faltered for a moment, plagued by the fear of revealing too much. Did she suspect a conspiracy? Something even worse lurking just out of reach? Dr. Wills's mind raced. Before he could manage a response, a commotion erupted. The shadow in the trees lunged abruptly, crashing into the clearing. Chaos. Screams erupted, a cacophony of panic as people began to flee. The medic dove forward, placing herself protectively over Emma, her hands shaking but resolute. "Stay calm. Everyone stay back," she shouted, but the crowd surged away, heart-pounding fright overtaking reason. Dr. Will stood paralyzed, his question hanging in the air like a failed promise, replaced by a single instinct then echoing loudly in his ears: find out what was happening. What is he doing? He wondered, every fiber of his being screaming for action. As adrenaline overwhelmed him, he felt the invisible chains of fear shift, the shadows in his mind began to stir, urging him away from the safety of the crowd. But what did he step into? The figure stepped forward, and in an explosive heartbeat, clarity crashed down. Too late, he recognized the familiar outline, but the knowing brought no comfort, only dread. What confrontations lay ahead? What dangers lurked beneath the horrifying reality unfurling before him? A voice came screaming through the din, "Get away from her." And in that moment, he knew, the battle was just beginning. Dr. Wills's heart dropped as the recognition settled in. It was Thomas, a fellow doctor but now twisted into something sinister. Fear wrapped around him like a vice. The crowd surged back, screams echoing off the playground equipment, blending with the eerie rustling of the trees behind them. "Thomas! What are you doing?" Dr. Wills shouted desperately, trying to mask the tremor in his voice. His mind raced. Was this the same man he had trusted? "I'm here to help," Thomas replied, but his voice came out low and chilling, as if he were mocking the chaos unfolding around them. The medic, still shielded over Emma, glanced back at Dr. Wills, eyes wide with confusion and terror. "He is a doctor." She gasped. "Why is he acting like this?" Thomas took another step, the shadows dancing around his figure. The growing darkness behind him seemed to pulse, as if alive. "You don't understand," he said, his tone shimmering dangerously between sincerity and madness. "This is all part of it. They wanted me to bring her here." "Who wanted you?" Dr. Wills could hardly breathe. "What are you talking about?" Ignoring him, Thomas approached Emma. The medic instinctively reached for Thomas, her movements frantic, but he brushed her off like a mere fly. He knelt beside Emma, ignoring the pleading look in the medic's eyes. His hands hovered over her, fingers twitching as if considering something unspeakable. "No." Dr. Wills lunged forward, adrenaline coursing through him like wildfire. He grappled with the chaos inside himself, trying to hold on to logic amidst the panic. "Get away from her." But as he reached Thomas, a blinding flash erupted from the clearing. It felt like being hit by a freight train. Dr. Wills staggered backward, his vision blurred by the explosion of light. The crowd howled in fear, stumbling over one another, an ocean of bodies fueled by terror. When the light faded, silence engulfed the air. Dr. Wills blinked away the remnants of brightness, his senses sharpening once more. Gritting his teeth, he turned to look for Emma, the medic's shield still huddled over the girl. "What just happened?" A mother's voice trembled nearby, clinging tightly to her child. Dr. Wills squinted, scanning the ground and checking for any sign of Thomas. Gone. Vanished as if the darkness itself had swallowed him whole. It was as though he had never been there, just an illusion, a nightmare. "No." The medic's voice cut through his thoughts as she shook Emma gently. "Wake up, please. We need help." Frantic, Dr. Wills rushed forward once more but froze when he caught sight of Emma's face, her lips tinged blue and skin ashen. Panic surged again, sharper and more visceral. "He didn't take her, did he?" Dr. Wills gasped. "He couldn't have stay calm," the medic urged as she fumbled with the equipment, her hands shaking uncontrollably. "Just let me," but before she could finish her sentence, a low rumble echoed from the tree line. The air crackled again. This time, the crowd turned toward the sound, a collective gasp filling the air. "I can't stand this!" someone screamed. "Get out! Run!" Dr. Wills glanced toward the trees, the shadows shifting with an unsettling life of their own. This was far from over. Whatever darkness had emerged tonight wouldn't retreat easily. The medic shot him a frantic look, realization washing over her face. "We need to leave. Whatever that was, it's not done yet." He nodded, dread pooling in the pit of his stomach. But Emma, as if in response, another figure emerged from the shadows, unmistakably familiar. The figure stepped closer, revealing a woman with eyes filled with a chaotic mix of fear and determination. "Dr. Wills. You need to hear this." With the crowd's panic skyrocketing, Dr. Wills felt the noose of suspense tighten around him. The fate of Emma and the truth about Thomas lingered just out of reach. He couldn't turn back now. What shocking revelations were hidden in the darkness? And how far would he have to go to uncover the truth? "Dr. Wills. You need to hear this." The woman's voice sliced through the chaos, pulling his attention away from Emma. He recognized her now, Rachel, a nurse from the clinic across town. Her pale face was drawn, eyes wide with fear. "What is it?" he asked, forcing himself to stay calm despite the storm brewing inside. "It's not just Thomas," she shouted, leaning closer, urgency spilling from her every word. "There is something more going on. I overheard them talking, the doctors, the board members, they're all involved." Dr. Will's heart raced. "Involved in what? What are you saying?" Rachel glanced nervously at the crowd, where parents shielded their children, faces drawn tight with worry. "They're experimenting," she whispered, as if merely speaking the words could summon danger. "Their a project, something dark. They're testing the boundaries of medicine in ways we never consider." As she spoke, the ground seemed to shake beneath Dr. Will's feet. He could hardly process her words. Was Thomas part of this? Was that what had pushed him over the edge? Before he could respond, a piercing scream erupted from the crowd. "Look! Over there!" someone yelled, pointing towards the tree line. Dr. Wills turned just in time to see a shadowy figure emerging, draped in dark clothes. Heart pounding, he recognized the hunched posture. "Thomas!" Dr. Wills shouted, instinctively stepping forward. But this time, it was different. This was not the same man he had known. "Stay back!" Rachel cried out, gripping Dr. Will's arm. The tension flickered like a live wire, urging Dr. Wills to stay put. He's not the only one. There are more of them. From between the trees, others appeared, cloaked figures, their faces obscured. They walked towards the fading light, slow and deliberate. Dr. Will's breath hung heavy in his chest. These were not doctors nor nurses. They looked like shadows spilled out of a nightmare. "What do they want?" he gasped, the air growing cold around them. "They want control," Rachel whispered, her urgency now tangible, like a heartbeat. "They're manipulating." The figures reached the edge of the crowd, and an unearthly sound spilled from their mouths. It was a blend of whispers and growls, almost like a chant. Dr. Wills felt his hair stand on end. People around him began to panic again, some attempting to retreat towards the parking lot, others searching for safe ground. "We need to get Emma and go," he shouted, grasping Rachel's arm, the urgency of the situation exploding around him. Suddenly, the figures raised their hands, and the chanting volume soared. A dark vortex seemed to pulse like a living thing, wrapping itself around the scared people near the trees. The medic still knelt by Emma, steadfast, but Dr. Wills could feel the darkness creeping closer, threatening to consume everything. "Dr. Wills!" Rachel screamed, tugging him toward the medic and Emma. "We can't let it pull us in. We have to save her." He turned to look, but seeing Emma's limp form shook him to the core. With a surge of determination, he broke into a sprint towards Emma, his heart thundering against his ribs. But the chant grew louder, twisting reality around him. Each step felt like wading through thick molasses, the crowd swirling in fear, caught in a grip neither of them could yet understand. "Help!" Rachel pushed him onward, her voice strained with terror. "We need to act now." As he reached the medic, another blinding flash lit up the clearing, bathing everything in a kaleidoscope of color. Dr. Wills shielded his eyes, but when he blinked away the brightness, the unthinkable happened. The crowd was scattered. People were gone, melted into shadows. Emma lay still, the medic's desperate attempts echoing in the silence. They were no longer just running from Thomas or the figures emerging from the darkness, they were fighting a battle against something that twisted reality itself. What new horrors lay ahead? Would they stand together against the shadows closing in, or would they, too, be swallowed by the encroaching darkness? Panic surged through Dr. Wills like a ferocious tide as he crouched beside Emma. The medic's frantic efforts blurred under the backdrop of chaos surrounding them. In front of him, Rachel's eyes darted toward the encroaching figures, then back at Emma, her face a mask of desperation. "Emma! Wake up!" he shouted, shaking her lightly, but the girl lay unmoving, cheeks pale against the gathering gloom. In those frantic moments, the reality of their predicament unfolded like a dark film reel, the whispering figures, the disappearing crowd, the sense that they were no longer in a mere medical emergency but at the center of something unspeakable. From the edge of the trees, the shadows drew nearer. They moved with an unnatural grace, as if gliding rather than walking. Dr. Wills could feel an oppressive force wrapping around him, squeezing the air from his lungs. The whispers grew more distinct now, a chilling chant that echoed with ancient bitterness. Dr. Wills. Rachel's voice cut through the fog. We have to get her out of here. It's not safe. He nodded, desperation igniting a flicker of hope in his chest. But as he reached for Emma again, a surge of immense energy pulsated from the figures. The ground beneath them trembled, kicking up dust that swirled like tiny phantoms in the air. Dr. Wills gritted his teeth, pushing against the sensation that something was trying to force them back, to keep them there, prisoners of this dark force. Help me lift her. He commanded Rachel. Together, they took hold of Emma and heaved her upward. The weight felt impossibly heavy against the backdrop of dread, each movement a fight against an unseen hand pulling them toward the shadows. The chanting grew louder, a symphony of despair that wrapped around them, tightening like a noose. Dr. Wills could barely process the chaos, caught in the dizzying mix of fear and determination. He could sense Rachel's effort beside him, her breath quickening as they moved closer to the tree-line, their sanctuary. Stay close. He yelled, scanning the area for any sign of help, any flicker of hope amidst the despair. But he saw nothing but the hollow eyes of terrified parents and the dark figures now swarming the clearing. What do we do? Rachel cried out, a hint of hysteria creeping into her tone. Find a vehicle. He gestured wildly toward the parking lot, still half concealed behind the maze of chaos. We can't let them take Emma. With renewed determination, he tightened his grip on Emma, carrying her weight as if it were lighter than air, driven solely by adrenaline and fear. They staggered backward, eyes fixed on the gathering shadows, when suddenly, a powerful burst of light illuminated the area. For a moment, the chanting ceased, as if the figures recoiled from the illumination. Dr. Wills blinked away the brightness, and what he saw chilled him to the bone. The crowd, once panicking and wild, was now eerily still, frozen like statues. Only the cloaked figures remained fluid, their movements growing bolder, more threatening. The air thickened, and a visceral fear settled deep within Dr. Wills' gut as he understood they were not merely observers of some twisted experiment, they were the next targets. Run! Dr. Wills shouted. Leaving the frozen crowd behind, he and Rachel raced towards the parking lot, panic reigniting in every corner of his mind. The shadows chased them, the sinister whispers now a roar in his ears. As they reached the edge of the clearing, a horrifying realization struck. Their escape would not be merely from the shadows, but from who they had once trusted to keep them safe. Dr. Wills, behind you! Rachel screamed, just as the darkness surged forward, clawing at their heels, ravenous for the light. What would they discover in the parking lot? Were their allies waiting, or was there nowhere left to run? With every heartbeat, the stakes rose higher as the shadows closed in, ready to consume their very souls. Dr. Wills felt the adrenaline coursing through his veins as he and Rachel burst through the tree-line. Heart pounding, he pushed forward, fear grinding at his mind. They were racing against more than shadows, against the very foundation of trust in the world around them. The parking lot loomed ahead, the dim glow of streetlights casting a flickering halo over the pavement. Where's the closest car? He shouted, eyes darting. No time to think, each second came packed with urgency. Over his shoulder, he could sense the darkness surging behind them, a tidal wave of dread built from more than just panic. It felt like it carried histories of betrayal, unspoken horrors waiting to claim new lives. To the right! Rachel cried, pointing to a minivan parked haphazardly near the entrance. As they reached it, he fumbled for the door handle, but his hands shook from both fear and the chilling weight of uncertainty. In a desperate motion, he pulled, throwing the door open while glancing back toward the encroaching figures. They were almost upon them. "Help me get her in," he urged, quickly positioning Emma on the back seat. The medic had done her best, but even now, Emma looked ghostly, breaths shallow and faint. "Stay with us, Emma," he murmured, fear racing through him like a wild beast. "Dr. Wills!" Rachel shouted, snapping him back. He turned just as one shadow lunged forward, reaching out with elongated fingers. "Get in!" she yelled, diving into the driver's seat. "I'm trying!" he roared, but the shadow paused, seeming to hesitate, as if assessing the threat they posed. In that moment of stillness, something whispered to him, a recognition crackling from the dark. This was not simply a creature of the night. It was fear personified, born from the very things they carried in their hearts. Suddenly, the shadow coiled back again, and without thinking twice, Dr. Wills slammed the door shut, feeling the intense rush of air whip against him as he dove into the minivan. "Go! Now!" he shouted, adrenaline-saturated urgency filling the space like a live wire. Rachel pressed down on the gas pedal, wheels screaming against the asphalt. The minivan jostled, he could hear the harness of metal straining as they shot forward. The darkness, almost reluctant to release its grip, recoiled momentarily, but Dr. Wills felt the faint chill on the base of his neck, a reminder that it was still coming for them. "Where do we go?" Rachel shouted, weaving through empty parking spaces. Glancing into the rearview mirror, Dr. Wills saw its shadows dancing at the edges of his vision, gnarled figures flickering like dying embers. Time was running out. "Just anywhere but here," he yelled, fighting back the fear that squeezed his throat. As they sped into the night, silence hanging heavy between them, Dr. Wills's heart thumped harder than ever. This wasn't just about Emma anymore. It was about the truth he had long ignored, the reality lurking beneath the surface of everyday life. They had to face it together. "Those figures, what they said," Rachel began, driving faster, her hands gripped tight on the wheel. "Do you think it's real? The experiments?" He felt a lump rise in his throat. "I don't know. But there's something they've been keeping hidden." "Dr. Wills," she interrupted, glancing at him briefly. "We need to figure out how to stop it, stop them, all of it. It has to be stopped." He looked at Emma, unconscious but alive. "But first, we need to get her to safety." His resolve solidified like ice, he could feel it coursing through him. The shadows may have chased them, but now the truth glimmered just beyond reach. As they drove into the night, headlights casting eerie shadows on the buildings flanking the narrow streets, he felt a flicker of hope ignite in his chest. They had escaped this moment. There was still time to rescue others before the darkness swallowed them whole, but they weren't out of danger yet. Emma stirred in the back seat, a slight whimper breaking the silence. Dr. Wills's heart twitched with hope. "Emma! Can you hear me?" he called out, turning back. "Stay with us." Her eyelids fluttered, revealing those deep, wide eyes, pools of fear but also something else, a glint of resilience. "Dr. Wills?" she croaked, voice weak but determined. "I'm scared." A lump rose in his throat. "I know, Emma. But I promise, we're going to save you. You're going to be okay." Suddenly, Rachel's voice snapped him back to reality. "Look!" she yelled, pointing. A police vehicle lit their path with flashing lights, pulling his focus as he felt the corners of normalcy in the chaos. "What do we do?" he questioned. Their hearts thundered as fear and hope collided. "Pull over," Rachel urged. "We need help." "Help means answers," Dr. Wills replied resolutely. "And we're damn well getting those answers now." As Rachel swerved onto the side of the road, the reality of what lay ahead loomed like an ominous shadow. Whatever they had confronted, the terror would not be silenced. But within that fear flickered the promise of resistance, the promise to fight back against the dark. Together, they jumped from the minivan, hearts racing as they ran toward the police vehicle, adrenaline wrapping around them like a thick fog. Dr. Wills's eyes locked onto those of the officer, pleading for understanding in a world that felt like it was about to unravel. "Please, something terrible is happening," he shouted as they approached, determination flooding every fiber of his being. And amidst the longing for safety, beneath the creeping fear of the shadows, one thing loomed large: they were not going down without a fight. But the true battle was only just beginning. To uncover the truth. To reclaim their lives, this was no farewell, it was only the beginning. You need to subscribe now, so you don't miss the next exclusive story. Smash the like button now to feed the algorithm. Flood the comments with your thoughts. What do you think will happen next? And please, share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Don't wait even one more second to join the fight against the shadows.